What's good, party people? Before we get started, I just want to say it's all your mom's fault. Yep, I said it, your mama. What's good, everyone? Welcome to the Joker the King podcast. This is episode 16. However, this is the very first video podcast that we are doing, and I'm glad you could join us. At the beginning of this video, you heard me say that it was all your mom's fault, and let me explain what I meant here. I'm just kidding. Whatever happened in your life is not all your mom's fault. In fact, we are going to talk about something very interesting today. It's how to forgive your parents. How to forgive your parents. Now, let me start by saying my parents, my mother and father, met in high school. My father was a year older than my mother, and near the start of her spring semester of her senior year, she was pregnant with me. Sometimes I like to say that I went to two high school proms and two high school graduations, hers and mine. But by the time my mother was 21, she was a mother of two sons trying to make ends meet with an off and on husband. And my parents were teenagers when they had me. No one could expect them to know what being a good parent really meant when they were busy trying to figure out what being an adult really meant. Um, my childhood was still pretty good, very good. I was raised by a single mom who figured out fairly quickly how to make everything work. She's quick, social, talkative, action oriented, sometimes the exact opposite of me. Um, I was timid, quiet, shy, re- reserved, methodical. Uh, Sometimes I'm slow to act because I carefully deliberate everything. And I think all of those differences were at the core of a lot of our arguments in the past, my mother and I. There are so many different ways in which other people inadvertently hurt us, but that hurt from our family tends to stay with us longer. It tends to sting a little bit more. Our parents, they color our beliefs of ourselves, they impact our views of the world, they affect our future interactions with other people. And we may not always realize it, but the words and the deeds of our parents have always influenced us a great deal. The problem is that as kids, we can't exactly put into words how much that power affects us. And as new primary caregivers, our parents are not always aware of how their own shortcomings impact our future. We are all human. You are human. Your parents are human. We are all human. And any human interaction, we are all influenced by each other's strengths and weaknesses. We're all influenced by each other's assets and deficiencies. We are influenced by our parents' very human flaws. And we are also elevated by our parents' very human love for our well being. So, in this lesson here, there are two key points to remember. The first is this: how you were treated by your parents had almost nothing to do with you, right? If your father was absent or abusive, it had more to do with him than you, right? If your mother was a mean spirited verbal tyrant, understand that it had more to do with her than it did with you, right? If your mother was a mean spirited verbal tyrant, then she was probably that way before you were born, and she may remain so long into the future. All of us, even you, are imperfect, and we are all flawed in some way. And the interesting thing is that becoming a parent is going to shine a spotlight on a person's limits. Like, take me, for example. I like to sit with people and talk things out completely before taking action. And this may sound like a strength in my past, but it grew into a weakness of mine when I became a father, right? Sitting and talking things out are fine sometimes, like when planning a budget or building a backyard fence, but it's not always fine when disciplining my kids, right? When a little kid does something wrong or disrespectful, swift action is sometimes needed instead of long, drawn out conversations, right? So, parenting is going to shine a light on some of the flaws that you may have, on some of the strengths and weaknesses you may have. But remember, how you were treated by your parents had almost nothing to do with you. And key point number two that I want to make sure you walk away with here is holding on to anger or resentment for your parents is like drinking poison hoping to kill the other person, right? Forgiving someone is an act of kindness that you give to yourself as well as to the person being forgiven. Let me say that again. I want to make sure you really understand this. Holding on to anger or resentment is like you drinking poison hoping to kill another person. Okay. Now, those two key points I want you to remember, but why you need to forgive your parents? Three reasons. Reason number one, forgiveness releases somebody of a burden that was being carried for a very long time, right? If your parents hurt you, they may feel guilt, they may feel sympathy. They're hurting their own child. That guilt and pain that they feel is enormous. Now, imagine how your parents would feel knowing that they hurt you so much it impacted your future. Now, imagine how your parents would feel if you forgave them for all of it, right? It releases that burden. That's reason number one why you need to forgive your parents. Reason number two why you need to forgive your parents, it releases you from someone else's power over you, right? For example, take this whole issue of absent parents, absent fathers, or absent mothers, right? It can be tough for a boy to grow up without a father. And as that boy matures, so does that resentment, that anger. But by carrying a body full of anger toward that absent father, it just gives that man more power over your life. Stop letting other people occupy space in your head rent free. And last, reason number three why you need to forgive your parents, forgiveness makes you feel lighter and happier with your own life, right? Sometimes the resentment that we feel about how we were raised, it will fester within us like an ulcer. There's this old saying that anger is this acid that corrodes the vessel in which it is stored. Holding on to grudges and anger and resentment only hurts you and no one else. They may not even know that you're holding on to this anger. Now, now when someone hurts me, instead of feeling anger, I just feel a bit of sadness for them. I feel a bit more compassion for them. I forgive and I let go. Now, if you've been listening to all the podcasts on your podcast app or Spotify or Apple, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts, you know that at the end of every episode, I give a little bit of homework, an action item for you to do for the week. Here's your action item. Here's your assignment. This week, I want you to literally forgive your parents, either in person or in the form of a letter that you write. If your parents are both alive and available, consider yourself very fortunate that you can have this opportunity to do this in person. Explain to them why forgiving them is a necessary part of your own growth as a human being. Be as specific or as detailed as you like, but the point here is to have a conversation with your parents and actually forgive them. Call them up on the phone, visit them in person if you can. Not only will it be good for them to hear about your journey into adulthood and healthy adulthood, but your physical presence there will burn a new visual of you as a healthy adult into their memories. If one or both of your parents are not available or not here to have this conversation with, then do it in a letter. Write a letter, separate, one for your mother, one for your father. Really get in touch with those things that may have held you back in the past and explain how forgiving them of those things allows you to grow into healthy adulthood. Don't don't punk out and write these letters in lieu of visiting your parents in person. If you can visit them in person, talk to them in person. But the point is, this week, take time to forgive your parents. Let that go. I'm glad you were here on this very first video podcast. For more information or to see any show notes or links or anything like that, all you got to do is go to jokertheking.com. Until then, party people, I will see you next week. Peace.